All right, hey guys, this is Darin. Hope you're having a good day. Are you ready for some Bible teaching that's not coronavirus related? Okay, I think I got something for you today. I want to share with you something that I've learned about and come to love about Jesus. It's related to how things unfolded on that Thursday and Friday, the Friday including the day that he was crucified. And a lot of things happened that evening after he had shared the Passover with his disciples. Things got really dark. He went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. His disciples fell asleep, and before he knew it, Judas Iscariot was there with the soldiers and everything. They arrested Jesus. The rest of the disciples ran like scared rabbits, and Jesus was brought before some of the Jewish leaders, and they tried as best they could to come up with something to accuse him of. It was really a joke. He was held in custody Thursday night, early Friday morning, was sent before Herod and also Pilate. He was beaten to within an inch of his life with a cruel Roman cat of nine tails, and then of course he was led up a hill where he carried his cross for a while, and then ultimately hung on a cross for 6 hours on what we call Good Friday. Gave up his life, spent that Friday night and Saturday in a tomb, and then was raised on Easter Sunday. And if we don't read the gospel accounts carefully, we can kind of begin to think that all of this stuff kind of took Jesus by surprise, that it just all kind of spun out of control, and he was kind of this unknowing victim in the whole thing. But that's not really the truth. In fact, let me share with you, this is from Luke 9:22, and this may have been days, weeks, even a few months before Jesus was crucified. But listen, he's talking to the disciples. He says, "The Son of Man must suffer many terrible things," he said. "He will be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law. He will be killed, but on the third day he will be raised from the dead." And in the parallel account of Matthew, in chapter 16, Matthew adds this important detail that this would all take place in Jerusalem. So Jesus knew all this stuff was going to happen, and after Jesus said this, he went up on a mountain, and it's kind of a weird situation. He met with Moses and Elijah. It's called the Transfiguration. His appearance was changed, and then he came down from the mountain and healed a young man who was demon possessed, and then maybe a few days transpired after that. And the next thing that Jesus says, this is from Luke 9:51. I want to read it to you in three different versions. So same verse, three different versions. Listen to this. Luke 9:51. This is from the New International Version. "As the time approached for him to be taken to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem." All right, it means that Jesus had this resolve that now it was time for him to go to Jerusalem. Same verse from the New King James Version. "Now it came to pass, when the time had come for him to be received up, that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem." So just this idea that Jesus that his face was set, which means that he was determined. He had this kind of focused vision that he had to go to Jerusalem. And then one more time, same verse. This is from the Message paraphrase. "When it came close to the time for his ascension," I love this, "he gathered up his courage and steeled himself for the journey to Jerusalem." And all these verses are saying the same thing, that Jesus had this incredible bravery and courage about him as he was now heading right into the place where he said all these things would unfold. It's almost like he buckled up his chin strap, put his helmet on, and said, this is on, this is where we're going. And so what does all this maybe mean to us? What are some of the applications for us today? I think the first thing I want to say is that the courage of Jesus is just another thing for which we can follow him and praise him and thank him. We don't talk much about Jesus's courage. I've sung hundreds of songs about Jesus' love and his mercy and his kindness and his generosity, and maybe a few songs about his power and strength, but I just haven't added this aspect of Jesus' life, his courage, very much to my gratitude for Jesus. And I think it's so important. Yes, it was love that brought him to the cross, but it was also his courage. And so it's just another reason for us to love him and to follow him and to choose him as our leader. The second thing is that as followers of Jesus, the teaching of Scriptures tells us that Jesus now lives inside of us. His presence is with us, and so this same Jesus who knowingly marched into all the horrors of the crucifixion and the desertion of his friends, he lives in us. He is with us too, and so that's important because we're going to face things much darker and harder and painful than the coronavirus in our future. And to know that this courageous Christ goes through that with us is an incredibly important thing to remember. And then finally, the courage of Jesus is something that we can draft on. And by that I mean, as we spend more time with Jesus, we become more courageous ourselves, which is also important. Now, you might point out that it didn't work so well for the disciples, right? Because that night, again, they kind of scattered when Jesus needed them, and Peter even denied that he knew Jesus when push came to shove. And then at the cross, only John is there, and then even afterwards, they're all kind of hiding in this upper room, and he said, that doesn't look like much courage to me, but eventually it did come. After they saw Jesus resurrected, these same guys went right back into Jerusalem and started preaching that Jesus was the Messiah, that he was the Son of God. And they got in trouble with the same group of people that had Jesus crucified. The very same people that had Jesus crucified, they were now standing before. And I want to read you something. This is from Acts chapter 4, verse 13. Again, this is the occasion where they've gotten in trouble again before the same group of people that had Jesus crucified. This is Acts 4:13. The members of the council were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, for they could see that they were ordinary men with no special training in Scriptures. Now catch this. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus. I've seen people do incredibly courageous things throughout my ministry life, and in particular in like memorial services where people will stand up with such boldness and courage and clarity and talk about their loved one. And I'm looking at that and said, I don't see any way that I could ever do that. And I realized that the reason that people can be bold in these situations is because they, like Peter and John, have been with Jesus. So there's just a couple of things that I'm learning, about Jesus' courage and how I need him to walk with me through scary stuff, and how that the more time I spend with him, the more courageous and bold I'll become as well. All right, guys, have a great one. Talk to you later.